Morning across Australia, and welcome to Creative Best Practices for Facebook for Business. Legal as well. This is brought to you by the Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program in conjunction with Business Station in Western Australia, Regional Development Australia in Brisbane for Queensland, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. You can watch this later on YouTube through the Business Station channel or through my own station, which is Dante St. James. I've got a channel there as well with all these videos and many more. So I look forward to catching up with those. And if you are watching this on YouTube right now, don't forget to leave a comment below if you'd like to ask a question about this. Now, this for the live people is open. It's a live one. It's not a recorded one. So you can whack in your questions in the Zoom webinar chat and the Q&A, and I'll see those pop up on my screen. But if you are watching on YouTube, pop it in the comments below, and don't forget to smash on that subscribe button so you can get all the different things that are coming through both the YouTube station, Business Station YouTube channel, and mine if you're watching it through mine as well. With that through, and very awkward, let's start on a little bit about me. My name is Dante St. James. I'm a Facebook Australian New Zealand community trainer and also part of the Facebook Global Lead Trainer Network. I've got lots and lots of certifications that mean that I can do lots and lots of things with Facebook and Instagram and the Facebook family of apps. I'm very proud to work with the Australian team based out of Sydney. Although I'm based out of Darwin, but currently in Cairns because I'm a bit of a digital nomad. I travel around the countryside, going from town to town, enjoying some really great workshops and one-to-ones with people right across Australia. And that's also with ASBAS Digital Solutions, where I'm an advisor and a presenter as well. There's many more badges I've got, but it's less about me and more about what you're going to get out of this particular session. In this presentation, we're going to prepare you to identify the creative formats and free apps that are going to help you to create much, much more engaging content. Because let's face it, that's what the name of the game is, to get the content that's going to help you to engage better with your audience on social media. We're going to explain those creative strategies for all your creative formats to ensure that you have very authentic and relevant storytelling as part of the content you're putting out there. It needs to be authentic because you want it to touch the humans that are on the other side. And we need it to be relevant and in the storytelling format because, well, basically we need to be able to reach people in a format that they can relate to. And we're going to look at discussing additional free tools that you can find online and methods that are going to enhance your existing and your new content as well. So a little bit about the background is that we need to be relevant. Of all the things we can do when it comes to what we're doing online, being relevant is perhaps the most key issue, is knowing that you can connect to people where they're at, when they're at, and what they're doing it on. So the devices they're using, which is by and large mostly mobiles these days, let's face it. So a lot of these tools are going to concentrate in and zero in on what the mobile format stuff is. It's going to help you to be much, much more relevant with people. Now, what we do in here, of course, we have created barriers. Now, whenever we go to do anything like this, we go, well, I feel like I can't do this because I don't have the right equipment to make all this wonderful content myself. I don't have a DSLR camera. I don't have a lighting rig. I don't have a dolly train to be wheeling around my camera so it picks up all the right, correct things. There's just so many different things that we've got to consider when it comes to the whole creation of new material. But that's not the only barrier. There could be another one, which is I don't have the money to hire someone to make this engaging content to me. Now, honestly, sometimes that can feel like a bit of a cop-out because the reality is that these tools and these networks were made for you and I to be able to do things ourselves, not to just reward those who have the most expensive equipment or who can pay people to go and do all this for them. So if equipment and money are your thing, that's what we're gonna do a lot of that kind of breaking down those barriers today. If it's a matter of not knowing what the knowledge is to make it, well, that's what this is all about. It's giving you the knowledge you need to be able to make these sort of awesome creative creations, I guess, as part of your social media properties. And there's also then the confidence. I'm not confident in my ability to make this compelling content for the platforms. We're definitely going to look at that today when you see how easy some of these tools are and how you can take them literally in your own hands on your mobile phone. It's going to change your whole approach to the way that you create new stuff for Facebook profiles, Facebook business pages, groups, and also for Instagram. Because let's face it, if you're talking about creativity, Instagram is very much where it's at. So first of all, we're going to take a look at what the format of this creative stuff comes about in. So when you start the whole creative process, a lot of people say, if you're going to paint something you know, or photograph something that you know. So what we think you really should do when you're creating some material for what you're going to do online with your particular Facebook group or your Facebook page or even your profile, start with what you know better than anyone else. Now, I'm not saying about that you better know better than anyone else in the world, but what is the thing that you have expertise in? So it could be your cause. It could be the thing that you feel the most passionate about, the mission that you have in life. And then what you do, you plan and then you create. Now, most of us just jump straight to the create thing. We just don't go, oh, here's my plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the strategy of how I'm going to do it. We just jump straight into create and thinking, oh, pull out Canva and start pulling together some templates and bam, boom, here we go. I've got it all made. The problem is though, without creating a plan first, you're going to be a little bit all over the place. Now, one thing we do know about any sort of stuff, whether it's a business or a cause or anything, is that high quality images are always going to bring your post to life. Photos are where Facebook went from being like an interesting little tool for people in colleges in the US to being a powerhouse of sharing. So when Facebook opened up the ability to be able to share photos, that's when it truly took off. And that was when it had to compete with new platforms like Instagram that had come along. Now, down the track, yes, it became more about video as well. And that's the video I watch daily. And this is more like 250 million hours of video now. That's a ridiculous amount of video that's consumed. Far more than what people watch on television, far more than what people are watching on Netflix. We're now seeing so much more consumption of video happening on Facebook and Instagram because it is highly relevant to the people who are following you, because they're following you for a reason. They're obviously interested in what you do, and it's far more relevant to where they're at. You cannot take your Netflix television with you everywhere because it's just going to look a bit silly on a tiny little mobile screen. Whereas the video that's made for social media is designed to be viewed on smaller screens like mobile phones, iPhones, Android phones, all of that kind of thing. Now, live video is taking that video to a whole new level. It's saying, I'm going to do something right off the bat. I'm going to stick this phone right in front of my face, and I'm going to go straight off and make this thing happen. Live video is a very interactive way to connect with both your supporters and with the people who follow your business. So this is going to be focusing a bit on, causes and not-for-profits, but at the same time, these principles go from everyone, not just not-for-profits, but for all kinds of businesses, because your fans are your customers, just like the same way with a not-for-profit. Their supporters are their customers as well. So let's take a look at Facebook Live. Now you can have a look at what it looks like here. It's always in this format. It does do the what they call landscape format. So what you're viewing this on your laptop or your computer right now, you can do it that way, but it really is designed for the mobile and laying it out in the upright format, or what they call portrait format. Yeah. Now, Facebook Live is also accompanied by another thing called Instagram Live. So they're very much the same kind of platform, very much the same kind of features, but designed specifically for those individual platforms. When Facebook Live came out, it was a revelation. It just became a massive, massive thing. And then when Instagram Live came out, we found a way to be able to communicate with people all around the world. Because for Instagram, is very global, where Facebook tends to be very locally focused to the people that you know and love, where Instagram is your fans, your followers, the people who you have some kind of influence over that are necessarily outside of your friends and family circle. So how do you be creative and live? Well, you do it by being live often. So you can try different kinds of broadcasts on your live videos to give you some kind of, I guess, so sort of a pattern, I suppose, on what things you can cover. Now, what we find is that hot topics work remarkably well. Now, by hot topics, I mean things that are topical, newsworthy, that are hot topics in your neighborhood, something like, particularly if you're doing a not-for-profit or a cause, something that's very, very much in the news around what it is that you do and support. If you're a business, it could be industry topics, industry news, something that's very new about the products and the services that you offer. Q&As are really, really fun, and these can be really super interactive. And whilst it might seem a little bit terrifying that you're doing something that's involving people asking lots and lots of questions out there, it's actually a really fun way to ensure that you have lots of interaction with people who support you and the people who love what you do. A Q&A can be something like, for instance, if you're selling cosmetics, what are the ingredients? What is the approach to sustainability? Is it animal friendly? Is it vegan friendly? That kind of thing. Or if you're selling a service such as coaching, you can take questions on, why would I pay you to be my coach? Or what is the expectation we have on the length of time it will take me to get some real lasting change in my life? Now, breaking news is also a very cool thing to do. So if you can be in the, I guess, the wrong place at the wrong time in some kind of news, or at a festival, or at at some sort of major event in your town, when you can do some live video from there, we can have all sorts of people from all over the world watching that. When I was at the Darwin Pride Festival last year, so it was one of the few outdoor festivals that actually occurred in Australia anywhere, and the first of the Pride festivals in the year to actually occur. I was able to do live video, and it reached over 20,000 people around the world who were just drinking in the atmosphere, and the fact that, you know, they couldn't believe that where I was in the world, while the rest of the world was shut down and in lockdown, this particular little town called Darwin that I was in was able to go forward and show that they were able to open and people were able to gather, and it was an amazing time and an amazing event. That kind of breaking news, it can change worlds and can change lives, and it can have such a big impact on people. Interviews are an increasingly popular format. So this could be something like, for instance, you'd hear on a podcast, for instance, where you've got a podcast host or an anchor, kind of like you'd expect from a news and current affairs show, where you have a particular person who is your anchor, your host. Let's say Oprah Winfrey, because that's very topical right now. Oprah Winfrey meeting with Harry and Megs. So Oprah Winfrey be the host, or you being the host, and then you have a colleague or a thought leader or someone who's famous in your town, or a celebrity, or a leader in your town, maybe the mayor or a councillor or something like that, an alderman, who comes into the conversation and talks about their approach. We see this a lot in podcasts. When you bring it to the live video, it adds a whole new dimension. And I think it's where things like Clubhouse have become very popular, in terms of people popping in unexpectedly and going live with audio only in Clubhouse's case. But I think when you add the video side of it, it just adds a whole new dimension. It adds an ability for you to be able to, I would say it adds body language, which is a really important aspect. When you don't have body language in a live event, it can feel a little bit flat, and you can't really quite tell who that person is. Like, for instance, you couldn't be able to tell the kind of person I am without me being in a video over here. You wouldn't know, how does he dress? What does he look like? He sounds like one thing but looks like another. I used to work in radio, and no one really knew what I looked like, because back then we didn't really have a lot of websites that advertised what we looked like. So we didn't really know what I looked like. I was just a voice, a disembodied voice on a radio. Now, performances are also a really great tool. Things like a dance recital, singing, bands going live, something like a cooking show or a cooking lesson, a demonstration of a product. These kind of things are really quite powerful, because they let you show off the product that you have in a very real way. Interacting with a product is like, well, I can show you that I have these wet ones, but actually taking them out of the packet and showing how they work, like pulling one out and then going, okay, this is how they pull out. and wiping it across my forehead to say, this is how I keep my face clean during the day and free of all the grime and grot. And I've got a very oily skin, so the oil that gathers over the day, and it makes me feel nice and fresh, and I can wipe my hands and then also sanitized. That is a far more powerful demonstration of wet ones than putting a packet in front of you and saying, here's my packet of wet ones. You can buy them at any supermarket. It's much more interactive, much more demonstrative, and it shows the abilities you can do and also the unexpected things you can say. So for instance, I said, yeah, I wipe my face and it's a great face wash, but it also, because it removes 99.9% of germs, because it says that on the packet, I can use it as a hand sanitizer as well. And my hands are sanitized as well as my face being cleaned. That is such more powerful way of demonstrating a product than simply going, here's my product, come and buy it. You can also do the behind the scenes stuff. Now, behind the scenes is also really fun because it lets you go beyond just the what looks so beautiful about this particular product to the setting of it up. So for instance, I've got my headphones, my newer headphones are sitting over to my left. So they are sitting there I could pick up my laptop and point it towards where they are, but you probably wouldn't see it because of my background video, or I can bring them forward and say, okay, this is how I charge them up. So they go on my head, but they charge in through the back here. You can't really quite see it because it keeps wiping it out. But you wipe it through the back here, and that then goes into my computer, loads it up, and also syncs it with my computer so it can pick up the latest settings and software to make those headphones work better in the future. So having something which goes behind the scenes of not just showing how I use my Neuros, but also showing how they maintain, how they update, shows you a behind the scenes angle that you wouldn't normally see. And that's particularly great in live videos, but also in your stories. So Instagram stories and Facebook stories are very popular for that reason. They go a little bit deeper into the behind the scenes. Whilst the feed content might be really beautiful and perfect, the behind the scenes is a little bit more raw, a little bit more real, and you can have a lot more fun with it. There's also watching with, which is you can watch an important event or a live stream with your audience, like a watch party. And there's the demo. So watch with is actually what was used to be called watch party. So that's now changed over so that you can do reaction videos. So whilst you're watching something else that's on YouTube, say it's the latest Unilad video or the Fail Army video, and you're watching it with some other people, so you can then record your live reactions to that. That's a very particular niche, and it's quite often tied in with gamers who love to do that sort of thing, or for people who are watching major television events like, I don't know, it might be the first episode of the next series of the Game of Thrones spin-off, The House of the Dragon. And demonstrations are definitely one of those things which really carries across well to Facebook and Instagram Live. Now, making videos seems to be a hassle. Everyone seems to think, oh, videos are so hard. Videos are so time consuming. What would I do? I'm not really particularly that creative. Well, there's a couple of particular apps that make video much more interesting for you. So this particular product you're seeing on the left is Inspiralized, which is a bit of plastic basically that you put vegetables in and it turns into spirals. So you know that how now in Coles and Woolies, they now sell the ability for you to have we call like spiralized zucchini, so zucchini spaghetti, that kind of stuff. Well, this is a thing that makes all that for you, so you can make it more interesting dinners for friends, family, kids particularly love spiral. Sorry about that. I'm having some big internet problems at the moment in Cairns. The mobile network is not working the way it should do. I'll just quickly share my screen again and we'll continue from where we left off. Here we go. So using Boomerang is a really powerful way of ensuring that you've got the ability to be able to add that color and that movement and that light and shade. And then you've got Hyperlapse, which is the time-lapse photography and video. So you're able to show at high speed, making the spiral, making the wrap, putting all the ingredients in, wrapping it up, and then cutting it. And then you've got this amazing looking lunch, which looks like it's totally vegan and totally delicious. I want that for lunch. That looks amazing. How good does that look? I want some of that. So it allows you to do something which normally take you maybe 5 minutes to do, and you can do it in about 30 seconds. So it's really fast and quick. Is how a lot of those tasty videos are done, where they suddenly like chop, 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 and then they go, and the bowl's full of chopped stuff. So that's pretty much the very similar way that they do that kind of photography. So you can use really simple apps that are free to use without you having to go to great expense and great deal of time to make those things work. The Facebook feed is a little bit different. So that's where you can create all sorts of stuff that really gather attention. Now, in the Facebook feed, you do really want to gather attention by having a great photo that expresses something of life. Now, in the case of Purify H2O, which is a not-for-profit that provides pure water access to villages in developing nations, they are all about showing the effect of what the work is that they do to encourage more support for their particular cause. The Instagram feed is much the same. So this is what this looks like. Very much about getting attention, but Instagram is a little bit less humanity and a little bit more behind the scenes. So whereas in Facebook, we had, here's the photo of the people benefiting from it, Instagram can benefit a lot more from the people who are doing the work of that particular non-for-profit. When it comes to stories, that full screen mobile experience makes a big difference, and it's a lot more fun and can be a whole lot more interactive as well, where you can go and donate to a particular not-for-profit. If you're a not-for-profit or a charity, you can receive donations through Instagram stories and Facebook stories. But what it mostly allows you to do is to add video or photos and then overlay text and other elements like stickers over the top of that as well. So stories, it's funny that in the last probably 6 months, I didn't notice it happen, but I've noticed that it has happened, is that I'm not a kid. I'm not a 25-year-old who's sitting there going, oh, I don't need to do stories. I don't really do the feed. In the last 6 months, I seem to have magically jumped from primarily using Instagram's feed to now using primarily Instagram's stories. I'm far more interested in the stories. And the reason is because when people do stories, they seem to go to a little bit more effort. The photos aren't so perfect. They're a little bit more interactive. They're a little bit more, I guess, telling a story. And that's the whole point of stories, is that they've got a little bit more going about them. They take up more room, so there's more creative space to work with. And it just seems that the creators who are making great stuff for stories seem to be going to a bit more trouble to do it and creating much more engaging stuff than what just happens in the feed. The feed is almost like something that introduces you to the stories. And I wouldn't be surprised if very shortly on Instagram, we start to see 2 rows of stories rather than just the one. You can share your content through a variety of different formats. So don't feel like you have to just do it in one place, such as images and videos or one or the other. You can do both. And you can create quite beautiful feeds, like you can see in the profile over here for Purify H2O. They've created quite a very beautiful feed that's got a mixture of the people who benefit and some important messages they want to put across as well for supporters to get behind them. So you can use all sorts of them: images, videos, stories. On Instagram, you can use Reels, which is even more interactive and goes for a bit longer. It's a bit like TikTok's very short format creative video. Some of the strategies you may want to go for, though, can be completely up to you. And there's so many different creative strategies you can follow. Let's just say that an effective visual can encourage people to think about something. It can help them evoke a feeling, an emotion, or it gets people to take some sort of action on what they're doing. A really good image is going to tell, like they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. Likewise, a really good image is going to tell so many words that you can't really say in text, because let's face it, the attention span online these days isn't particularly long and isn't particularly helpful. So if you're trying to get a very complex message across, then text is probably not the way that that's going to occur. You can put a bit of detail in there, like these guys at Purify H2O have done, but the picture is really telling the story. These are people who are living the joy of having access to pure water in their life, where maybe they didn't have that before. You can tailor the content for your particular audience. In this case, the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the equivalent of our RSPCA, is all about fighting animal cruelty and promoting adoption of pets rather than the puppy farms that used to be very, very rampant here in Australia and thankfully are starting to become less and less common. Tailoring content for your audience means that you're going, well, people who want to support animals, we need to show them lots of cute baby animals because that's what they seem to react best to. Baby dachshunds, baby kittens being bottle fed, baby domestic animals being bottle fed and looked after and carried and cuddled. All that sort of stuff is going to be tailored specifically for what your audience loves to see. So have a think about that. What does your audience love to see? What are the things that you've done in the past on Instagram and Facebook that have really seemed to have had a good effect with people? Now, those things could be very different between Instagram and Facebook because you often have very different audiences on those two different platforms. On Facebook, your audience is more likely to be local, and they're more likely to be local to where you are. Where on Instagram, that whole presence that you're following you could be anywhere in the world. They could be literally in any country, anywhere. And so your message may be slightly different. If you're looking for support from locals, then Instagram may not be the best platform for you. So you'll tailor your content for the audience of where they're at. If you've got a let's just say it's an eco-friendly gift wrapping thing. So you're using things like beeswax wraps that can be reusable and washed to be able to, do something where you're not like wasting paper wrap all the time. You're actually just something that you can reuse as gift wrapping. Well, then you may want to take different photos and different content for Instagram, which is all about how great it looks. And then on Facebook, you may want to go a bit more personal and saying, this week we sold 100 of our reusable gift wraps. That means that well over 1,000 rolls of gift wrap have now been saved, which means less old growth forest logging, less print, ink, and plastic out in our waterways and out in our landfills. And because these are 100% biodegradable over a very short period of time, even if they do get disposed of, they're going to return to the earth from which they came. So you can tell a great ongoing, deeper story on Facebook, but on Instagram, you can have the beautiful pictures showing just how good gifts do look when they're wrapped in your particular beeswax wrapping. Connecting with your audience is about integrating your brand into what you're doing. So it's not just saying, here's my brand, here's my logo, cover everything in your logo. These guys at Purify H2O are very subtle about it. So they've got the person who's presenting something in a photo there on Facebook on the left, and they've integrated that brand in by simply having her wear the t-shirt that's got the brand logo on it, rather than having that this logo shining in the middle of it all and showing, taking over the screen essentially. Now, telling stories are better than delivering facts. So you could say that kids get sick every summer, and because summer's a bad time for water in the third world, because bugs and bacteria thrive in the hotter, warmer conditions, and it means that the water is going to be less pure and causing more sickness. That's a fact. But they tell a story instead, which is meet Maria. Her kids used to get sick every summer, but with Purify H2O's water filtration system, her children now go to school healthy all year round. Now that is a much more powerful story than just delivering a fact that water is not as pure in summer as it is in winter because the bugs and the bacteria can grow. They didn't even need to go into that much detail. All they said is that her kids used to get sick every summer. This is Maria. But now they don't because of this thing that we're able to deliver. Now, whilst this might be a not-for-profit who is raising funds to deliver water filtration systems around the world, the same principle applies for people with your business. Rather than we serve 20 people a day who are looking for our particular service, you can say, here's Jim. He's one of the 20 people a day that we serve who are looking for change in their lives. So you can actually tell a greater impact, and people respond to people. They really do. So we respond to a story being told rather than a fact being delivered. Fact, you will use less paper towels if you buy reusable toweling and wash it relatively often in your home, right? but the story could be, I used to buy so many paper towels and we used to be throwing all this away, and I was wondering where it all went to. And then when I found out where it all goes to, and that paper towels actually also contain a certain amount of plastic that goes into the environment, it made me feel really sick because I feel like I was being part of the problem, not part of the solution. In comes reusable paper towels, which are actually toweling that you can use. They're basically towels, but they're being packaged as reusable paper towels. That tells a greater story because it's a story about me. It's a story about me as a human rather than just a fact that's delivered, which is really cold. And using short copy is always going to trump bad copy. Now, we've got very specific stats around the use of the text in ads specifically, and they've shown a sponsored thing here too. We find that the least amount of text to have, like with one line of text, so they've got one line above here, is the absolute sweet spot. That is the perfect amount of text for people to stop and look at something, because they don't have to see a big block of text before they see something which is graphical and interesting. The eye just looks over big blocks of text and goes, too long, didn't read, skip over it, too confusing, too much information, I want to be entertained and I don't want to have to be reading things. So if you have one line of text there, it's going to be much more impacting, much more attractive than having big giant blocks of text. Now, I know that every coach and every person who's a talking head on a Facebook Live seems to have like reams and reams and reams of text and lots of emojis and points and all that. There's a reason why they keep having to advertise, is because they're not actually doing that well, because they're taking too long to deliver their message. They're using very old-fashioned techniques, which are baffle people with BS, and in order to get a sale and trick them into a sale. If you can do, that long lot of copy in just one line, you're going to be a master at this. Now, as you go to line number 2, we know that you lose about 10% of people who would normally would normally probably click through if there was just one line. But once you go to line 3, you're losing, get this right, 30%. 30% of the people who were most likely going to be clicking on your content to go through and read more have now moved on. So you've lost 30% straight off the bat once you go to that third line. If you get a more, where they click on the more to see even more lines of that, you've lost well over 70%. So having all that might be great for those people who are readers, but few people are. Remember, we're working on mobile phones these days, not really desktop computers so much, which means that the attention span is shorter, the screen is smaller, and so big blocks of text are actually a visual block that people are just not going to want to go and consume. They're looking for 30 seconds while they're waiting for their coffee to be made, or they're this is a sad but true fact, they're probably on the toilet and reading Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds. So they're not there to read, they're there to be entertained. They're there to have time filled. And they don't want that time filled by having to read stuff. Developing a consistent look and feel allows people to recognize who you are and what you do straight off the bat. It's really easy to see that this is about water. And it's about the third world or developing nations and people who don't have access to fresh water. I don't even have to see their brand. I don't even have to see the name. I don't even have to see any text to know that this is probably going to be about delivering fresh water to villages in the developing world. That sort of thing is a powerful storytelling tool, because for those people, and most people are this way, who are visual, not readers, then they're going to scan over this and go, I know what this is. I now want to find out more. I'll tap on one of the photos to get the information that lies within. Does your feed, does your Instagram profile, does your Facebook photos tell a story without a caption being there, having to be used? If it does, you're already got people into what you're doing. You've already got people understanding what it is you do before you actually have to tell them in words exactly what you do. That is probably the most powerful creative tool you're going to find is, can someone tell what you do from the photos you provided on your feed if they didn't have any other information to work off? If the answer is no, then you might have to get to work at making some better photos. Now, you can communicate the one main message or idea per post. When you try to go and put too much information into a post or multiple different messages in there, something's going to get lost. And what it usually is is the most important thing you want to get across gets lost in the abundance of messages that are out there. Now, remember, when someone's on Facebook or Instagram, they're being communicated hundreds of different concepts in a minute. They could be flicking through and there's hundreds of things that are all clamoring for attention, wanting to read or see or buy or click or tap. All those things are now creeping out there, wanting you to do that. The problem being that if you just look like all the other content that's on there, and you've got lots and lots of text, and you've got complicated messaging, and you're promoting this eco-friendly product, this eco-friendly product, this eco-friendly product, and you're advertising the fact that you're supporting a not-for-profit that's trying to save the world as well, every one of those messages will get lost. One person may discover you on the feed and see something they like and want to read further, but the vast majority of people are just not going to see it because it's just not interesting enough. Because again, when you're communicating lots of images in a post, you're trying to get too much information into what essentially someone's got 3 seconds to engage with what you're doing. If they can't get it in 3 seconds, they're not going to get it. They're going to ignore you. And this is why you have so few business pages these days getting any kind of reach, is simply because the stuff that business pages produce is absolutely woeful. It's just sell, 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 buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. There's no story, there's no creativity, there's no sense of, oh, I wonder if I'll learn something new and interesting out of this today, instead of every time I go there, buy this, shop now. So working with the rule of thirds, this will change those. In this particular photo, in Notable, the most interesting part of this particular photo is the guy falling through the tube in the middle. Now, the rule of thirds says that you'll put the most interesting or most important part of your photo into a particular quadrant within this hash, this tic-tac-toe, or this noughts and crosses. We call it a grid. So the grid that you imaginarily lay upon there. Now, what you may do is actually have Instagram, and your camera actually has the ability, I know iPhones do, the ability to be able to put a grid over the top of any scene you're taking a photo of. This will help you with the rule of thirds. The idea is to make a photo more interesting is that you move the image, the part of the image that's the most important, to one of the intersecting lines. Now, in this case, we've got all of the subject right in the middle of this photo, but it could be more interesting if you're able to, move that around a bit. In other variations of this, we know that that this is located more towards where the head is actually located in these intersecting lines here. If you can see where I'm actually pointing, hopefully you can. And you can see where it's pointing in that intersecting line, made for a much, much more interesting photo, because this photo was turned around more so the shadow below took up more of the photo. It wasn't as cut off as this. So with the head moved up to the intersecting lines, the shadow also moved up, and it made it a much more interesting photo. Once you start placing the interesting object in your photos at any one of these intersecting lines, so point 1, point 2, point 3, and point 4, or in the middle of all 4 of them, you suddenly start to build a much more interesting photo that makes people look. If everything was center aligned and every face was center aligned, it becomes a very repetitious process of going through a feed and seeing the same thing post after post after post after post. When you start using those intersecting points, that's when you're going to start to have far more interesting photos that give people a reason to stop what they're doing and actually look at what you produced. Using some empty space to spotlight your subject. So for instance, in these guys, you've got the 2 chocolates sitting above. They're like thick shakes, milkshakes that are in mason jars, and then on top of them they put things like little mini magnums and little ice creams that make it like a really super sweet treat. So in these photos, they've used a lot of empty space. So there's a lot of empty space up here is actually helping to highlight what is actually there. With space, an empty space particularly, it's got a very boring background. So in this case, they've got sort of a timber table. It's creating a setup that's allowing these sprinkles and the color to really pop out. So by using a little bit of space around it, rather than just going right down in close on those sprinkles, you've got the ability to be able to show something even more thoroughly. And it's a much more interesting photo. It's a far more interactive looking photo. And it's, when you think about it, this is the view you'll have on top of your milkshake when you buy one of these. You can use what are called leading lines, and leading lines are sort of working with the idea of repetition of lines. So you've got, in this case, you've got horizontal lines from the upside down little snack pots, so dessert pots. So you see those layers, they're creating consistent lines of working horizontally across the photo. But then we've got then repeated vertical lines with the forks, which are pointing down, which are creating then leading lines that all make you then look up towards the horizontal lines. So how I explain that is that all those forks are like, they're all pointing towards those delicious looking dessert cups. And someone should need to be doing these in my town, because honestly, I would eat these things for days. That strawberry one on the right looks delicious. But the point is that everything's leading lines, they're leading you towards looking at something. So those lines on the bottom formed by the forks are making you look up towards the layers of that cake and dessert and cream and mousse and all the beautiful ingredients that are in those dessert pots. So doing that creates an idea that it's, number one, a very interesting photo, but number two, it's actually pointing you towards where the subject is. Experiment with different kinds of lighting. Now, this is something I absolutely love to do with the photography I do. I'm by no means a professional, but if I look at my Instagram feed, it's actually remarkably interesting, because usually the lighting that I'm using, it's usually a combination of, the sun shining through gaps like you've got in this one, the shadows that are formed by uneven sunshine, right down to when I'm doing things like, for instance, looking at sunsets and mists coming over mountains. So the most recent photo I took was playing with the idea of light that I could see outside my hotel room, right where I'm staying in Cairns at the moment. I'll actually bring it up for you, because it was actually kind of a cool photo, but it was playing with the idea of light. So if I hold that up to the camera, you hopefully can see it. No, it's going to hide because I've got a fake background. Putting it back a bit. No, still can't see it. Nope, sorry, wasn't going to work. It's unfortunately this back. I'll have to turn off my background, and I'll try and hold it up my camera so you can actually see it. Let's go back one. Back. Change my video. Get rid of my virtual background. There you go. You can see my plain hotel room. Now you can see why I had a much more interesting photo in there. So I take the photo, bring it up to the screen. You can see it's playing with the lights that are coming, the light from the sun that's coming in over the mountain where I am in Cairns. So it's a lot more interesting than just simply putting my head out the window and taking a photo. And I've got lots of photos that do that play with the idea of light. So another one would be a photo of when I went to the Gold Coast recently. I took a photo of the Pink Poodle Motel sign. So I was playing with the idea of the bright light and part of the sign that was working, and then the darkness from the part of the sign that wasn't working. And you see that theme repeated over and over again through most of the photos that I take, is playing with different levels of lighting. These days, cameras on phones are amazing at taking photography that's inside places and in dark places. I've got a Google Pixel phone. You may have one of the later iPhones. They're both amazing for taking low light photography and allowing you to even take photos at night, which are able to see through the darkness. Using a single focal point like this particular one, which is a little bit of dessert, one of those dessert pots that they've dug down into, and then with a background in the background. The focal point is, and it's called bokeh photography, where you've got a very, very tight focus in on one thing, and then the background is blurred. Most new camera phones these days will have that built in, as called portrait mode. Portrait mode exists on iPhones, it exists on the Pixel phones. I know the Samsung phones do it now as well. But if you don't do it that way, there's lots of other apps that will do that for you, that allow you to focus in on the one piece of subject that you're looking at and then blur the background. That means that you can, if you've got a product that is really, really super visual and very colorful, you can use this particular idea to really dig down deep into the details of your product whilst not letting the background distract from it too much. Using your full vertical canvas space as a principle is just going to make a big difference to the way you do things with Instagram stories particular, but also Facebook stories too. By using the most amount of space, you're then creating a full screen experience. And when you've got full screen, instead of taking up just a little tiny little bit, then you're able to get so much more attention, far more than you would get if you're using just a little bit of space on that. So we'll see this one again. This guy's jumping up and down. He's taking up the full screen. You can see him jumping and then using all these amazing little stickers all around it as well. The other example is having the text flying in and flying out on the top of the screen, whilst the picture part of it and the video part of it is actually in the bottom of it. So there's a very clear difference between the words and the imagery below. Being interactive means using stickers, basically. So if you've ever seen stickers in Instagram stories, they're a really fun way of adding the ability for people to actually do stuff. So if you're looking at these two donuts, which one should you have, the plain or the sprinkles? And you can select which one, and it shows you immediately that satisfying effect of seeing what other people had voted for. I'm going to take a guess that about 90% of people went for the sprinkles and not the plain. Just at a guess. That just might be my opinion, though. And if you're looking at things like Happy Pride, the countdown to Pride, it's looking at 1 day, 7 hours and 59 minutes. That sort of interactivity allows you to go, oh, wow, I better hurry up and do the thing I want to do. Polls, like the one on the left, are really, really fun. And it's almost irresistible when you see a poll come up on a story to be able to not go past and want to tap on one of those different, like you really do. If someone just simply asks a question, you know, which of these shots, 1, 2, or 3 would you like? They're not as likely to respond as if they are if you go, which one, this one or this one? And you give them a choice where you can tap on one or the other and give them that. You can also do little slides that interact between I don't like this and I do like this. They're a little bit of fun as well. Anything that really will force you to have some sort of interaction with that also helps out on the algorithm with you as being a highly productive and highly interactive creator of content. And the algorithms will reward you for those interactions. You can surprise and delight. So give things that just don't really, I guess, make much sense. Like, for instance, I've got a puppy here tapping and hold, trying to catch the Webby. This is like just a cute photo with something in it that forces people to try and interact with. And then things like, for instance, this snipping the wick down to a shorter length. So it's giving you some sort of information about how to use candles. So know when you can get the best out of your candles. Don't burn it for any more than 3 or 4 hours maximum. Snip the wick down to a lower level when the flame is closer to the candle wax so it can melt it properly rather than just burning a wick. So just little things that give you a little bits of information and go, huh, did not know that. That's a really good idea. When it comes down to the kind of things that you want to put forward about your organization or your particular business, because most of you are going to be small business owners on this call, is getting your mission across by introducing the main focus of your business and the value that people will get from dealing with your business. Or if you're an organization, what they'll get from supporting and volunteering for you. Then what you want to do is highlight the impact you've had on your customers or on the community you're trying to serve. So you highlight the positive results people have from your product, highlight the positive results you've had from your activities in the community if you're a not-for-profit, show some demonstration of what it is you do. So when you're showing some sort of motion, some video about what it is you do, how you work. Now that might be more difficult if most of your work is done in front of a Zoom call like this one is, or it's done in hotel rooms around the country like a lot of my work is. I can add a little bit of that demo. So I can then go, for instance, this morning when I had a business meeting down the breakfast cafe downstairs, I should have really taken to my Instagram stories and explained this is where I'm going. So I'm off to talk about some stuff with a guy who also works out of Darwin, who I'm catching up with here in Cairns. We're going to talk about the different things we're working on, see how we can help each other. That would have made quite a fascinating Instagram story because it would create that tension of, I'm tired, I had a bad sleep last night, but I'm having this great meeting which is likely going to get me in touch with new business with a new business partner. And having a call to action at the end of everything you do is going to enable you to give people something to do after they've read what you've written or seen the content you've got or done something with what it is you do. A call to action means that there's a purpose to what you're posting rather than just simply, oh, I'm just doing some branding or, oh, I'm just taking some nice photos. Having a call to action at the end of everything you do. So say, for instance, this is what we do for communities all around the world. Donate here. That call to action of donate here gives someone something to do after they've consumed your content. For instance, this is a person called Susan G. Komen, who works with breast cancer survivors and also with fighting the fight against metastatic breast cancer, because the patients can't fight their cancer if they can't get treatment. And what she wants to do is ensure that there's treatment going to the people who really, really need it. So what she's done here is gone, okay, I've got a story about what I've done. Now I'm going to give you a call to action at the end, which is to click on this link to go through and see if there's something that you can do to help support her mission in life. The impact is right there. It's very obvious. Most breast cancer deaths are a result of metastatic breast cancer. While we fight for more research to find the cures, we need to help keep fighting to eliminate the barriers to people getting the care they need to. That's the impact they're having. There's a clear call to action right there with the link. So it gives them something to do once they have consumed that information. And then there's a visual, a really powerful visual that tells the story for you. It's telling even more of the story than what the words will ever do. And then they've got an emotionally compelling problem down the bottom. So this is very good for if you're working with a cause or you're working with a not-for-profit, but the principles are very much the same when you're dealing with business. You'll explain, if I go back a few steps, so the impact of what your product does on the world, a clear path to action for someone to actually buy your product, a visual of your product that really explains how it's used rather than just a single photo of it, and then something that helps you at the bottom of that gives you some sort of emotional connection to that product. So instead of just talking about metastatic breast cancer, we could be talking about, for instance, the spiralizer, the thing that was spiralizing that sweet potato before. You'd be saying, okay, the emotionally compelling problem is my kids never ate veggies until I spiralized. That could be something which gives an emotional connection, because I think every parent on this planet has had trouble getting their kids to eat their veggies. So some of the tools you're going to use to create this compelling content, things like using a tripod, one of those octopus leg tripods that allow you to stabilize your camera phone and get shots like this. So you get someone holding that burger out there over a scene. So, burgers don't magically float above the Aegean Sea, but by doing this, you're creating something that looks far more interesting and looks more compelling than just having a burger sitting on the table. You can take photos and videos in very well lit places. Using daylight is going to make a big, big difference. So you can work between natural light, which is the light that sort of comes from sort of the midday sun, softer light, which may come through, like I've got in this room in these curtains. If I open them up, there's these soft curtains, the sheer curtains that allow some light in it, but softens it just a little bit more. You can use then hard light, which is very, very much about highlighting light and shade. So these folks are very, very white and they're in the darkness. So that light and shade is very, very stark. And you can use night shots, if you've got a camera that supports it really well, to highlight really bright, bold colors with very, very dark backgrounds. And it can be quite a stunning pop of color when you can find a photo like that one shown. So working with the different kinds of light means that you're able to produce very, very, very different kinds of photos. Now, what I would suggest you do if you're going to have a feed of photos on either Facebook or Instagram is pick a light and stick with it. Stick with either natural light, softer indoor light, hard light in darker places, and then night scenes, but just do one of them. Don't just go from one to the other, to the other, the other. Try and stick to one kind of light source. It becomes part of what your brand is. It becomes part of what people expect when they see what it is you do. And then you can edit photos and videos for a much more consistent look and feel across what you're doing. So some of the great apps you can use, Color Story allows you to put styles and effects over the top of your photos. Let's put some overlays and templates over the top of your photos. These are all apps that you can put on your phone. Story Boost gives you more creative templates that you can put into your photos and videos to really boost them into a whole different look. Type Loop adds animated text to your photos, like the stickers you see in Instagram. You can now add those to your photos and then add them directly into Instagram or Facebook. Mojo lets you combine many different photos and videos. So you can experiment with things like stop motion. You can resize the photos you've got in there and edit the videos to work better with the platforms you're trying to deliver those to. Quick is awesome for just the simple edits and trims of your videos and adding music and adding text overlays as well. Video Shop is about taking those longer videos, and you can do this on your phone, cut it down a short video and then make it into ads or small stories or small pieces of stuff that adds into your feed. And Canva is probably the most well-known of all these creative tools because it allows you to create really beautiful designs, not just for photos these days, but it actually allows you to make videos as well. So you can create videos in the format of stories, in regular feed videos. You can even make longer format, 10-minute long YouTube videos as well. So there's no sort of end to what Canva can do these days. Create a little DIY home studio for yourself just by using a phone, little mini tripods that cost about $5 on Wish and eBay and all that. If you don't have good surfaces to work from, say Caesar stone kitchen tops, just get contact paper and lay that over a board or cardboard, and that can create the background for the things you want to put in there. Just might need big boards if you've got a big product. Foam core or foam styrofoam sheeting can be really good for creating very high highlight backgrounds. Like for instance, they've used these as white backgrounds because that white background then creates a really, really solid shadow-free light source. And then using, of course, natural light. That's the ultimate you want to do for getting the best kind of shots you can. So you can get some things that look like this. They're created by someone who did this. So they got this kind of photo based upon this. Gaffer taping down some contact paper on some board and then just doing it in some natural light. And they sold 1 million units of this spiralizer online because of this campaign. So you can see how old that phone is. Like it's about 5 years old. That's what they were able to do. Produce photos and videos that look like this from doing that. Makes a big difference, huh? So to wrap it all up, you want to keep your audience's mind as you start creating your content. Be very authentic with all your content. Use natural brand voice, the thing that is really, really natural and authentic and easy to do. Don't try to pretend to be someone you're not. And tell a compelling story about your cause, your product, the things that you do, your services. That's going to be something that includes story of people, not just story of your product. Creating those high quality, engaging creative doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money on a camera. Most mobile phones, even ones that are several years old, can take amazing videos and amazing stuff. Using free apps like Boomerang, which are built into Instagram these days. Layout is another one. Using Canva, that will help really lift your photos and your videos into a whole new place. You can find out a bit more about this for your not-for-profits, particularly under Facebook's social good stuff. But otherwise, going to Facebook Blueprint will also show you a massive range, hundreds of different little short courses of no more than 5, 6, 7 minutes that will allow you to learn more about how to make great creative, but also how to use the Facebook family of apps for your stuff. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope you got something out of that, got some stuff you can take away, lots of creative juice ideas going on. Everyone probably wants to buy one of those spiralizers now, or at least have a burger or a donut, because they were showing us all the most colorful foods that are so not good for us. Thank you, Facebook. I appreciate you doing that. Just as I'm coming into morning tea time, what do I got over there? We've got some cookies. That'll have to do today. Thank you so much again. Have a fantastic week, and I hope you have a good weekend as well. And thanks for spending a bit of time working on your business, not just in your business. See you later.